Hello and welcome to another episode of I Will Hold Space for Your Darkness, a first responder mental health podcast. I'm your host, Erin Jane. And today I am joined by a fellow Aussie. So you know that I am very excited to be having this conversation. Today I'm joined by the lovely Matt Newlands. He's a former Australian police officer. He's a counsellor, educator and speaker. He's a mental health advocate, as well as an Are You OK Day ambassador. He's also a co-founder of Frontline Mental Health, which is a really important organisation back home helping first responders and military veterans with their mental health. And we have lots to jump in and discuss today. So thank you for joining me today, Matt.
It's really good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. All right, mate. Let's like I said, we have lots to talk about because you are a busy man. But I would sort of love to take you back in time a little bit. And obviously I mentioned at the top of the show that you are a former police officer from Australia, but different agency to the one that I used to work for. Tell me a little bit about your time in the South Australian Police Force and equally maybe what like drew you towards serving in that capacity.
Yeah, no worries. Well, I think it's always an interesting question about what drew me there. When I was 4 years old, my dad's best mate at the time, he was in the cops. And so he rocked up to my fourth birthday party with the police car he was in uniform and did all the stuff. And I've got this photo of him holding me next to the police car. And I look to probably have, some of my kindy mates sitting in the back seat. And the reason why I like that photo is, firstly, Simon was a really influential man in my life, certainly through my younger years. And then even as I guess in my late teens, and I started to get considered joining the police. But it was also one of those catalyst moments where apparently from then I said that I wanted to join the police when I was older. And I think it's pretty common, really, isn't it, for young kids when they have these interactions with police or fire or, nurses, soldiers, whatever, and then say, I'm going to do that when I grow up. So, and I did.
That was Maggie Doyle was an early influence for me, but we won't.
Yeah.
Not everyone will get that reference, but that's okay.
Yeah, Maggie Doyle, Tom Croydon, love it. So that was the thing for me through through schooling. I enjoyed school. I had a small group of friends. I grew up south of Adelaide in South Australia. I got to high school and started to think a little bit more seriously about joining the police and what that would look like. So I started making some inquiries with police recruiting as early as year 11. So I finished my schooling. I ended up moving into state. I went to New South Wales for about a couple of years, maybe post school, and I had kind of just put the police on hold for a period of time, and I think that was really driven by that whole life experience. Go get some, go live a life as much as you can. By the time you're 20, when I came back to South Australia and joined the police, I was still just a kid, really, and had my turned 21 while I was at the police academy. So. I didn't miss a day. Loved it. Loved every day at the academy. I was literally living the dream, as corny as it sounds, but it was what I wanted. I was doing the thing. So graduated course 1, 2006, finished with the course captain for the last out phase. I picked up the leadership award, all the stuff that means absolutely nothing the following day. And you know what I mean? We have all these big aspirations when we're in, and I think it's helpful, while you're there, to try to instill that, that value of excellence, strive to be the best you can. So that was good, but we also got the gentle reminder after graduation with that when we got our first posting that we were lower ranked than the police dogs. So I was like, that's fair,
Jesus.
Yeah. But I think there was truth in that, in a sense that they had actually done some time on the tools. So we were brand new and fresh.
This is true. Yeah.
Brand new and
no,
fresh.
we always got reminded that it was that you got your registered numbers. And there was, that competition, it would have been for you guys, because I joined in 06 as well. And it was the reminder was given that it was the lowest person, and their rank number from your squad is still above the top person in the squad behind you. So at the end of the day, it's just a number.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's, we always look for that comparison and competition, don't we? I think it's healthy. if harnessed well, it but it's also that gentle reminder as well of like the hierarchy that exists too. So
Yeah.
look, I enjoyed it. I liked all that stuff about it. I got out into the real world policing and was fortunate to work on a good team with some good senior connies that were probably a little maybe, I don't know, I wouldn't say necessarily old school in their policing. They just kind of had this like the real do before, do with, do after type approach. So it was very much like, you watch what I do, don't get yourself in any trouble, don't just make sure you're safe. And then I was fortunate. So I did 6 months at Sturt Police Station, which is just south of Adelaide, still metropolitan. And then I was, my name was picked out of the hat to go to Port Augusta, which is about 3 hours north of this Adelaide CBD and a bit more of a regional area. So I went from having like a team of 8 with a sergeant, senior constable to a very much smaller team. I think it was about 3 or 4 of us. And I think my first shift there was a sergeant and one other than me, and the other guy that was on, he was 6 months ahead of me. So so it was a pretty steep learning curve.
Country policing, it's a bit different.
It was very different, but like good different as well. Like, so I found that really had to harness communication skills in community. You go from locking up someone on the foreshore through the day, and then you knock off at 3 o'clock, and then you pushing your trolley around Woolworths to get your dinner, and there's old mate who got bail from from his warrants, and he's looking at you. So you had to be very mindful of living and working within a small community, and that was helpful. That put me in a good stead for I think the rest of my career, and then also some of those other challenges when it came to actually involving yourself in jobs. We didn't necessarily have resources like Star Group. We set up like CIB and investigators and things, but there was an ability to be able to just get involved in a lot more for a lot longer. And I remember this one job that we were in Port Augusta, and there was a stabbing, and the offender was still at the house. And so we pulled up out the front. There was 3 of us working, and so we pull up in two cars, and I jump out, put my vest on because we didn't have the LBVs, the load bearing vest at the time. So you had your ballistic vest in the boot of the car. So you jump out, you unzip the little bag, put your vest on, and I was like, "Oh, we're just going to cordon this," and they're like, "No, there's nobody to cordon for. Like, there's no one else coming. It's just us." So, fair enough. But that was it. But that's the reason why I joined the job. I was all about it. Up to the front door, and we sort of forced our way in, and arrested the offender without any real incident. And the victim was okay. And so that was just like the first of a series of jobs over the 2 years up there, which just helped, I think, advance the experience that I had, so that when I came back metropolitan policing again, I just seemed to have a lot more experience than maybe others who had gone to, specific areas or, jurisdictions, departments, agencies that, just didn't necessarily get the exposure to a vast array of things. Maybe they were a little bit more subjected to a certain type of crime, and that was pretty much all they'd had their experience in. So, it was good.
And like you're saying too, like when you don't have a lot of resources, you kind of have to think on your feet a little bit faster and be maybe more, creative in some of the solutions that you come up with.
Yeah, no, that's true. I think you start to become very good at interpreting legislation, in various ways.
Yes.
So
yeah,
all lawful.
We'll leave that one there.
All lawful for
exactly.
any sort of. I think it's all past the statute of limitations on most things. So.
But no, like I've had friends who, from Vicpol, like worked up in the country, and it is like you're saying, it's very different to big, like you're saying, going to the supermarket or, the dry cleaners, and like the bloke's house that you went to and him and his missus were having a Barney and you rock up and then you're like, oh yeah, can I get my work shirts? Like, it's, you have to, and I think it also, and you would probably maybe be able to speak better than I can, but it also makes it so you treat people with, I think, a certain level of humanity that I think can kind of get lost if it's kind of a broader spectrum of the community, like when you know you're going to interact with these people constantly, you do have to be maybe a little bit more thoughtful about the way that you go about things, even though you still have to do your job and they have to respect the fact that you have a job to do. There are ways to go about it without, I mean, essentially being an asshole when you don't have to be.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like certainly when you start thinking about the real small stations, like the 1 and 2 man stations that people are embedded, they become super tricky. I think I was fortunate in that the Port Augusta was still, I guess, like a headquarter station. The population was like people knew who you were, and there wasn't so much of like the ability to be able to be anonymous as such, but it wasn't so much that sort of like real deep connection into community. That being said, you're absolutely right. Like we had to become very mindful. And I remember there was another particular incident when I was working at Sturt. We went to a big fire out the front of a hotel one night, and it felt very much like it was, uniforms versus those who were throwing punches, and it wasn't necessarily anything to do with the people involved. And so then when I went to Port Augusta, there was a fight that was happening out the front of one of the hotels in the main street, and I pulled up still with a very like junior and I guess dare I say like quite an immature approach to how I was like my policing. And so I've jumped out and I've started like getting involved and trying to restore order. Yeah, but on reflection, like afterwards, these were all people that they work in the community. I work in the community. They were obviously, they were out. They were just bit pissed and they were behaving a bit poorly, but the next week, like they might have been the person who, I don't know, is the local plumber or works at Big W or something, and they know who you are and like who they are. So it was just that not that any issues came from it, but it was thankfully I picked up on that quickly and went, I need to make sure that I'm not just the arsehole that's rolled in uniform and just you do as I say type thing. So whilst I had no intentions of staying in Port Augusta any longer than my tenure, like my 2 years, but I also wanted to embed in community and still be part of the local town, and it was always really important to me to to do my job as best as I possibly could, and a big part of policing is to you're obviously of service to your community. So
yeah, you can learn to de-escalate in better ways.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, and so you got, or we call it balloted. You got balloted to Port Augusta. Did you time? Yeah. Does that mean did you get a free kick and kind of get a bit of a choice about where you went after that?
No, there's like tiered approaches, right? So when you're at the academy, they kind of alluded to the fact, hey, there's metro, there's country. If you go country, you get discounted rent, you get priority posting, or you get your sort of bumped up to the top of the list when you want to come back, and you get your choice of where you want to come back. And so all of that aside, I had also signed the bit of paper that said the commissioner could send me wherever. I knew what I was getting into. And, unlike, our military friends who get posted every 2 or 3 years, depending on, where you are in the cops, like it's certainly in South Australia, they only really get one crack at it. They can only do it once you're at like that first time out the academy. So I was like, you know what, I'm 21 years old. I didn't have the responsibility of like a mortgage and kids and all that sort of stuff. I was with my then partner, now wife. She wasn't in the job, but it was a disruption, but we knew that we could go to set anywhere. And then once we got there, you start to find out that you did get like half price rent, but we certainly didn't get priority posting. We were sort of like maybe like a tier 3 country posting, and you then didn't get the choice of posting on the way back out. You had to just sit on the transfer list after your 2 years and still kind of hope. And so all of these little truths then come forward, which, like I said, if they just said that right from the start, you at least you know what you're in for. But being said, I was very fortunate. I got my posting of choice purely by, in a sense, by chance. Someone from Christie's Beach, I believe, wanted to go to Port Augusta, and I wanted to come from Port Augusta to Christie's Beach, and so it was, in essence, it was basically a straight swap at the end of my 2 years. So I was lucky.
Beautiful.
I was very lucky. There's some people that get stuck in country postings for much longer than they want to.
Yeah, absolutely. And for what I've seen of pictures, Christie's Beach is absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, it's stunning. I grew up down here, so I live in Aldinga Beach now. which is probably about another 25 minutes south of Christie's Beach. So Aldinga, I believe, has got some of the best beaches in the world. I'm on the Fleurieu Peninsula. Those that know me know how passionate I am about my community. I do some work around supporting the Fleurieu Future Leaders program down here as well. But it's different when you're policing it versus when you're living in it. And I thought, I grew up here. I'll be fine. I know my way around. And I often reference it similar to the show Stranger Things on Netflix, where you go into the upside down. It kind of it looks the same, but it's just darker and it's got a lot of shadows, and there's monsters lurking behind certain things. And on face value, the town that I grew up in and the community that I live in now, I'm fortunate to get to see the community for really what it is. And when we're in first responder roles, we know that we often get a warped sense of our environment because we're only dealing with the small percentage of the population who causes a little bit of grief.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so you headed back, got a nice plum roll at Christie's Beach, and talk to me about sort of where you went from there.
So Christie's, I had obviously been in the job now for about 2 years. So probably in my mind, I thought that I knew everything. Obviously I didn't. I just knew where to or who to ask for the answers. I didn't know necessarily myself, but I started to get an idea as to who to ask and have a bit of I'd finished my probationary period. I was now permanently appointed. I think when I got back to Christie's, I may have also done the senior constable exam. So I had done the prerequisite theoretical stuff for the next evolution of my career. And I was just enjoying just being on the team, just without having the pressure of having the Proby book following me around, and just being one of the team members, and really enjoyed it. Settled in. Again, I was very fortunate through my career. I worked on some really great teams with some really good people. People had done quite a few years in the job at various times, and so that experience was super helpful. I'd mostly still frontline, just general duties positions, but I did start to think about leadership opportunities. So I was probably one of those nerds that was when I'm in the cops, I'm going to senior connie by 25, sergeant by 30, senior sergeant by 40. That gives me sort of 20 years to navigate commissioned rank. And if I can retire as a LSA commander, that'll be my police legacy sort of, and then I'll just become a retired cop and talk about jobs from when I was in, and do those things that
back in my day.
Exactly right. Be that guy. So that was the plan, and so I set about trying to put that into place. So I did my study, but I also wanted to make sure that I did my time too, and in that I got the experience behind me, so that if I was going to have the second or third hook throughout my career, that there would be a trust maybe from myself in that rank and that position, but certainly a trust from the people around me, that they knew that they could rely on a sense of leadership from that role. And that, I think a lot of that can come with just time on the tools. So I tried to immerse myself in the job. It became everything for me, and I loved it. I went right deep down into that sort of rabbit warren of what policing identity looks like. Because of I think a couple of years that I did in Port Augusta, I'd separated away from civilian friends during that period. And then when I came back to Christie's, I was never available because I was working rosters and weekends. And this is a well-beaten path that I'm sure any first responder listeners, regardless of what country they're in, will likely align with. But that was okay because I liked hanging out with my team. I liked finishing night shift on a Friday morning and sitting somewhere, having, 6 beers, and it's 9 a.m. and people are coming in to get their morning coffees to go to the office, and just, it was just a different world. So I think that for me, it made it probably challenging to disconnect from that, because I enjoyed it. I liked the people. I felt like I was reasonably good at it. And that people outside of this job just didn't understand, so I just stayed away from them. So, so Christie's,
and isn't that like a little warm blanket we all cover ourselves with? They don't get it. They don't understand.
And I think that's one of the big contributors to the identity bit, isn't it? It's like when we get out, and now we're on the outside, and it's like, where do I recreate that? and that's a little struggle I'm sure we'll get to in the conversation. But
Mm-hmm.
so I then went and started to explore a couple of different other parts of policing. I went and did a secondment to the criminal investigation branch. I did some plainclothes work with them, which was not, not in any way like undercover stuff. Just as you would know, just the drug action teams and that sort of stuff. Just jumping fences and cutting down crops and that sort of stuff.
All the fun stuff.
Yeah, which I enjoyed. Another part of the policing aspect. We did a bit with, I guess, serious criminal trespass or burglaries or home invasions, whatever people want to call them, depending on their department. Stolen cars, like that was, again, working with
the
some
kind of
good
volume
detectives.
crime, all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
I worked with
and
some
you got
good,
into like
good detectives.
You went into like a state tactical response group.
Yeah, I moved to state tac after Christie's. I had worked a little bit at uniform, just like a uniform tactical team, and it sounds almost like it's something that it's not. It was just more proactive policing. Is probably the best way to describe it. So we were additional with supplement patrols. On bigger taskings, we might go and do like when our primary business was walkthroughs of hotels, chasing down warrants or, those that have breached bail, that sort of stuff, doing some of that more proactive policing, which is the stuff that I liked. The team was really good. I got to a point where I was then acting supervisor of a small team, and that was in 2013 while I was still attached to Christie's. Was when I lost a close friend to suicide. He was off duty. I was on duty. And so that was a bit of it. Like that was a pretty significant part of my career that I don't necessarily lock in on that and say that it's only that started the downward spiral of like poor mental health, but because we can't discount, the accumulation of
cumulative
challenges and
nature,
trauma and things that, couple that with poor mental health literacy, lack of understanding around wellbeing practice, and it's a recipe that is, unfortunately cooked up in a lot of agencies. So.
Yeah. Can I ask, and maybe it's something you've considered, maybe it's not, was it kind of one of the first times in your career, having lost someone in that way, that made you realize you weren't invincible?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And it's weird, isn't it? Because in my time, I had been to so many suicides, so much death.
Yeah.
Like it was just what we did, like those that have been in police, fire, ambulance, certainly some military units as well would become quite comfortable. But so I think it's strange in that it always feels like, well, it won't affect me because I'm in uniform. Like this is not, you are not us. We are
barrier,
not you.
Yeah.
So this doesn't happen in our world, but then we turn around and unfortunately heaps of our mates in our communities, it happens all the time. So, for me, I had a couple of exposures to, I guess, team members who had either gone off work for periods of time due to poor mental health, or there'd been a couple of times where people had maybe had attempts to take their life, and it just was still one of those unspoken things. And we just made some adjustments at work. In my experience, people didn't really know what to do with that information, so we kind of just... I don't know, almost waited for the person to come back. And it was never like, I never tried to make it like a thing for anybody. I was genuinely cared for them. But I also know on reflection, like even now when I think about the couple of instances, I also didn't reach out to them either and go like, hey, I heard this happened. Like, is everything, like what's going on? Can I help? Like, what do you need? What does your family need? So I think for me it was a real turning point, losing my mate. It was that, like, is this the outcome? Is this what happens? Like this seems to be the path. He super like good copper, like really good guy, really good human being. Fun to be around, and then you're like, is this what we do? Like the hourglass has turned on all of us, and that's not true. I don't subscribe to that narrative. I know that there's still a rhetoric around that, but that was my experience, and I thought. So then over probably the end of 2013 through to the beginning of 2015, it got a lot worse. Work made sense, home didn't. So or personal life didn't make sense. I didn't have a position description in my personal life. I didn't have a rank or a expectation or obligations. When I was in uniform, I knew that I was a senior constable of police. I knew that I was the acting supervisor or acting sergeant of a uniform TAC team. I understood my place, my authorities, the job, the role. I was able to do it reasonably well. I had become quite good at shutting down and suppressing all of my emotions as well, because that makes you really good at what you do. And I'd lost the ability to sort of turn that back on again. And so I think that, again, recipe for disaster. So by the beginning of 2015, I had applied for a position at the State Tactical Response Group. I had completed my sergeant and senior sergeant theoretical stuff. I'd done the exams. I'd done the course. So I was qualified to those ranks, but I was quite happy just sitting still for a few years, just learning, again, just looking for leadership opportunities. State TAC was like uniform TAC, just proactive policing and helping with more of the saturation style stuff in the city. So I thought that would be a place for me to then just, again, hone my craft and get a bit more experience, a bit more broadly outside of just one particular jurisdiction. I thought if I can, one LSA, I thought if I could go to State TAC, we went all over the place. So I started to learn a little bit more about the city and the north of the city. East, west, did a couple of sort of remote trips as well up to some of the lands to work in community when things had escalated up there. And I mean, that unfortunately was a pretty short-lived experience, because while things were going really great at work, and I saw this as a really great promotional opportunity, albeit it was a sideways as far as rank goes. I was becoming really unwell. So and I was keeping it a secret from everybody. I had decided to go to a doctor. I was drinking heavily. I was relying heavily on alcohol to get to sleep each night. I was relying then heavily on caffeine to try to prop me up through the day. Just wasn't looking after myself. If everything I did it, to excess. If I went, like we went training, at work, you'd train to the point of like injury and exhaustion. It was just, everything was done at a fast pace. And I think that was a lot to do with just the emotional suppression stuff, like trying to find stuff to break through. I think because of the move, I went to a new team, people that didn't know me. They didn't necessarily know what a healthy me looked like. Maybe I was able to still put on a really good mask, so that they got the very professional, the very focused and determined person to do the role and to do it properly. I saw that rank in those guys as specialists in what they were doing, and it was a highly sought after role. So I didn't want to let anyone down. So there was absolutely no way I was going to say, oh, by the way, I've been to the doctor and I've been referred to a psychologist, and he tells me I've got severe to extreme post-traumatic stress and depression, but don't worry, I've told him bullshit. I just didn't say anything except, that bit to the doctor. I did say, that's bullshit. I don't have PTSD. I've never been deployed to war, was my argument. And I don't feel anything. So how could I be depressed? So I didn't really entertain that. Things got heaps worse that year. While I was working was still fine, but in my personal life it got real bad, to the point where in May of 2015, that was the first time that I was like, you know what, I think everybody else would be better off if I was dead. And I think I'm intentional with those words, because I think sometimes we can get caught up when we talk about, conversations about suicide. I often hear, I think that I'd be better off dead. It's like, no, I think others would be better off if I was dead, which taps into, for me, it was almost like tapping into that value of service. I'll be doing everybody a favor if I just get out of everyone's way. I'm just this, darkness was the way that I described myself. So that was a really, really challenging time certainly for me, but more so I think for my family, my wife. I had a 4-year-old daughter at the time. It got real messy. Work still didn't really understand, because I wasn't really saying much. The guys at work were incredibly supportive, knowing that I was having challenges at home, but no one really knew how bad. And some of those
probably
guys
chopped it up to Like,
just
it's that causing
yeah.
that as opposed to
like it's this whole big picture stuff. So, but like I said that some of those guys on the team are still like really good mates of mine now, and and I wouldn't be here, if it wasn't for a couple of those boys, and then a couple of like close friends, which I'm sure I'll talk about, like Marley from Aussie Frontline, and another close friend that he's in the job, he's in a specialist unit, so I often don't talk too much about him, but it's always important that I reference, like, at least he knows if he ever listens to a podcast that he knows I'm talking about him. So, so it was a really difficult time, and it ultimately got to the point where, whilst I didn't take my life, I got very close, and then the poor decision making just kept on going and going. So not only was it then around to my health and my relationships, but it started to really take a big impact at work, and ultimately resulted in my arrest by anti-corruption branch in August of 2015 for theft of a baseball bat, of all things. So which was then it became the second day, the 7th of August, was the second day that I was like, you know what, like, I've now lost everything. Like, I don't know who I am if I'm not a cop. And standing in the city watch house, having been charged with aggravated theft, and bail papers and suspension papers that say you can't communicate with your team, like, I'd been cut off. In my mind, I'd been cut off from my community. I'd had my identity removed. They obviously took my my role as a police away, and I didn't know who I was. So I was like, well, I don't know that, this is going to work in my favor in any way. Like, I couldn't have caused any more harm in people's lives. And interestingly, it was a conversation with the boss. And so I guess a side digression quickly, this year is actually 10 years, 10-year anniversary dates that have rolled around for me. And there's, and that's the 10-year anniversary stuff of, like, first time thoughts of suicide and behaviors of suicide, the arrest, the first court appearance, like all those type of stuff, like all, really horrifically challenging times for me and the family.
Yeah.
And this boss, I actually messaged him, who he gave me a lift from the city watch house back home that day. And it was obvious that he knew that I was, like, not in a good state, and he was concerned. Yeah. But the 45-minute drive home from the watch house was, conversations around all my other roles. He asked about my parents. My dad lives here in South Australia. So does my mum now, but at the time she lived in Sydney with my stepdad. They're all here now. But he asked about my brother in America. Asked about my younger brother, like, who lives here in South Australia as well. Asked about, like, obviously my wife and my daughter. Just trying to, I think, breathe life into who Matt Newlands was, as opposed to, like, this ID number that I had just become. So, and that kept me alive. So, I sent him a message of thanks. I didn't even know if it was still his same number. And I got a message back from him, which was just one of gratitude, but it meant an incredible amount to me just to, to think of that conversation, and among many others, but on that particular day, that anniversary of being arrested, certainly as a cop, like, that's a hard time. Yeah, and that was the last time I wore the uniform. So, I asked to take the uniform off. I got arrested at work. And that was, and I haven't put a police uniform on since. So, I mean, that obviously, it wasn't over on that day. And obviously I survived. I'm here talking to you. So, so I managed to work through a lot of those thoughts at the time. We had court appearances, all the stuff that goes with any investigation and arrest. I pled guilty to the charge. South Australia police went for a custodial sentence. They wanted me to go inside for it. Thankfully,
for a baseball bat.
Yeah. Well, and I think obviously I've had 10 years to think about it, right? So,
perspective is everything.
Exactly right. I think they did the best I resigned myself, or at least accept the fact that people did the best they could with the information they had at the time. And I just don't think it's helpful for me. It doesn't change anything by dwelling on like the whys. Like I've asked, there's so many questions around arrest criteria, around use of general search warrants, around like arresting someone without a victim for the first like few weeks. There's all these questions that I think like, man, I did the job for 10 years. Like, and I know that I had certain expectations and things to abide by. It seems to be a little bit different in some circumstances, but outside of like the anger and frustration and the shame of like all of that, it's like, you know what, here we are. Nothing. There's no good that comes from dwelling on that. I can't get my career back. No one's going to give me the badge
just sitting in that resentment and
exactly right.
Poor me, why me sort of mindset.
Can I say, I think like it kind of speaks to the like inverted bell curve of the PTG experience, right? There's the low part, which, the post-traumatic growth experience is not to diminish the difficulty, the challenge, the distress. For some people, it's one incident. For others, it's multiple. But for me, it was like, I can't live here. I don't, like, this is just not helpful. And to be honest, like after the arrest, up until January of 2016, I was still like dangerously, having thoughts of, me and others would be better off if I wasn't here. And I was kept alive really by, my wife, my daughter, two close mates, my parents, my brothers, like that would check in, other friends. I found that disclosure or just talking was, the nexus to survival for me at that time. So I had to talk. I just had to say the things that were coming up for me. And I found that I wrote a letter, and I've still got it. I've still got my journal from the time. And it starts with, "This is not a suicide note. Like I actually don't want to die. I just don't know what else to do." And like I was just lost. And I relied then heavily on the people around me to provide guidance, to help get me through that fog. And a message that I got from Marley, from Aussie Frontline. I still got that message despite every time I upgrade my phone. I bring it across with me.
I love that.
And it talks to this high level view of what he saw as my life. And it's like, if you could just see that the forest you're in is like there's clearings, there's stuff on the other side of this. This is what we all see. And so then I heard Tora Bright, who was an Australian Winter Olympian snowboarder. She said that when she did her gold medal run for snowboarding, her brother was her coach. She wasn't sure that she had it in her to do the score. And she said she borrowed belief from her brother, who was like, you've got this. So for me, I like to say that I just borrowed belief from others. I had zero self-worth, self-value. But I did believe the people around me had my best interests. And I thought, if I can't trust me, I can trust them. And so I thought, if they are telling me that, my life is and will be worth living, then I have at the very least have to see if that's true. I have to give that a chance. So, so I wrote this letter. I started talking to my family about, I did take the bat. Like I came into possession of it lawfully, but I made a decision to keep it. It's still theft, and you can't do that. You can't do that in community, and you certainly can't do it in the police. So we can get caught up in investigations and outcomes, and serves no purpose in my mind. It's like how do I move forward was my first focus. And then once I started to feel like I'd spent a few years getting myself well, it was like, well, how can I then be part of helping other people who are navigating really difficult and challenging times themselves, so they don't do the dumb shit that I do. So like how do we not make like foolish decisions? Or at the very least, like if people are in this distress where they're thinking that death is an option, like not to sit in that alone. What part can I play to sit alongside and let them talk and ask them questions and share some of my learnings. If
so
it's
before we get into that, because you just shared a lot. firstly, thank you for being so open and willing to talk about it. I know that, it is part of what you do and in some of the roles that you have now, but I can still imagine that taking yourself back to those times and those thoughts can equally be, quite heavy at times. And especially, like you're saying, coming across the 10-year anniversaries and all that kind of thing. I want to say a lot of what you just shared is sort of part of the things that we talk about, whereas like how important it is to have that supportive network and community around you. And like you're saying, like it wasn't just one person, it was like this beautiful network that you had fostered. And I hadn't heard that before, but that the imagery that it evokes of like, I had no belief in myself, but I borrowed their belief. Like that's incredibly powerful, because I think we've probably all had times in our life when we have struggled with that self-belief, and to kind of go, okay, well, they can't, like, I can't see what they see in me, but it has to be enough just to get me through this period, and then I can build up my own confidence, esteem, self-worth, like whatever you want to call it. And equally too, there was something that you said, when you first started talking about your suicidal ideation, and I think it's, like I'm the product of that. Like I lost my father to suicide when I was a young child, so it's one of those things that you hear a lot about, which is awful and unfortunate, but the stigma attached to people who die by suicide is that it's really selfish, and it's always rubbed me the wrong way. But equally, when we do have the opportunity to speak to people like you who have been in the grips of that darkness, I think we know that we're not thinking rationally and logically if we are at the point where we're contemplating taking our life, because we all have that natural survival instinct to want to, get through to the next day. But I think the thing that you shared, which I really wanted to touch on, is a lot of the time it's not like necessarily I can't cope. It's, which part of it would be that there is such an immense amount of pain, but bringing you back to the words that you use is everyone else would be better off without me. And I think that is something that gets lost in a lot of the conversations about people who do die by suicide, or do have the ideation and the thoughts and potentially make the attempts. A lot of the time, and from my experience with conversations I've had with lots of people on the topic, and reading for the last, 40 years of my life, trying to understand, perhaps what my dad was going through, a lot of the time those people, even if it's irrational and illogical, they're actually trying to be incredibly selfless, because they think that they're a burden on others. And the way that you described that really just like invoked that sort of image for me very much so.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you saying that, because it's incredibly challenging. And I know, I know that listeners, obviously even just hearing stories and just hearing other people's experiences around suicide, it can activate some of their own past experiences and their own emotional responses. So I'm always conscious of that. In fact, one of the things that you said in one of your podcasts when you were the guest was when you were talking about the compassion that you had when your child was born, and you reflected on your father. And I wasn't sure where you were going when I was listening to you say these things. And so these are my words now, not yours. But like, to have this level of compassion of, even though there is this much love for your child, the pain that a person could be going through, and it's not to say that it's a comparison, and it's not, well, that should have kept people alive. It's like, it's not that. It's just they're separate things.
Overrode it.
Yeah. And I was like, it was a really interesting point that had me reflecting. And because I often will put up a photo, like my daughter was 4 at the time, and I look at pictures of me with her during that time. And there's one particular picture that I took at the park, which was only a couple of days after like my first sort of like thoughts of and behaviors around like maybe others would be better off if I wasn't here. And I see this like picture of her, and when you know it's a 4-year-old playing at the park with her dad. So in me, I see joy and I see happiness in her face, and in my face, I see like the mask and the like survival, like just get through today. And I sometimes think, because it's now, like I said, 10 years later, and I've done a lot of work, and I've tried to understand myself and other people's experiences as well. And I think like sometimes with judgment, I think back to 2015 version of me, and it's like, how is that not enough? Like, how is that not enough that to endure through the pain? But I am quick to put some, compassion around that thought as well for that version of me, because that version of me, to be fair, still shows up. Like this is 10 years later, like darkness still arrives at my doorstep too. Just like many others. This is a thing that I think we hopefully get good at living with, and putting the strategies in place to keep that sort of darkness at bay for me. But it's still there. Like it still shows up at times of challenge, distress, anniversaries. So yeah, I think it's important that we have these conversations about suicide, as hard as they are. They're incredibly meaningful. So because they're so unique and individual, we can't take a one size fits all approach. So we have to then hold space for people, pun intended, I guess, to some extent with the podcast, but we have to hold space for people so they can share. James Hetfield from Metallica the other night, when he played here in Adelaide, said, he said, like, we all go through darkness, at times of darkness, and he goes like, I'd like to share some of my darkness with you, and I'd like to hope that you can share some of your darkness with me. And I think that we know that when the human experience is struggle, so if we do this in isolation, like, it is more often than not destined to not go our way. Humans are a pack animal. We have to work together. We have to be together. In 2025, it seems like everything's competitive, and we need strengths first, and everything's comparative. So I'm like, no, how do we promote cultures where we can do this? We can sit and talk, and we can share, and we can learn from each other, and we can take away things from what each other says and perspectives of life. And then, look at ways of implementing some of those strategies ourselves, or things that we should stay away from. We have to be talking about it.
Absolutely. And I appreciate what you just said. And I also look at it like, what does this conversation cost either of us? Cost our time, which is a valuable commodity. And some might say, the most valuable, because we can't get it back. But you're comfortable obviously disclosing aspects of your life and your journey and things you've gone through, and equally so am I. But there are a lot of people who either aren't, or they're at the precipice of trying to figure out how to get well, how to heal, how to get healthy, what's going to help them. So it's like, I just kind of look at it like you put it out there for the people who need it and who come across it and who find it. And I think, what's that, there's no ulterior motive other than wanting to, help people. And if a conversation can, well, then that's the best that we can do.
Absolutely. And I think we're probably both good examples of where a conversation has helped. Conversations continue to improve life. Exactly.
Absolutely. And it was funny in the lead up to chatting with you today. I had a thought. So our careers have sort of been very mirrored. Like, we joined at the similar time. We ended our career at similar intervals, and slightly different circumstances. But I like left and moved over here, and sort of never really had time to process leaving that, and that identity aspect was definitely sort of a challenge for me as well. I guess I wonder, and I know leaving, and you obviously had some mental health struggles, and you would have had to go through quite a healing process. But I guess I sort of wondered, I know you obviously did a couple of roles, and you've pursued counselling in the time since you left. But I remember sitting in Boston, crying, because I was so overwhelmed with like the options available because it was like everything. I was like 30, maybe 31 years old. I'd left the only career that I had envisaged myself having. I left my country behind. I left everything behind. And I'm sitting in this brand new country. And it's like that kind of, world is your oyster. But holy fuck, what do I actually do when the thing that you thought you were always going to do isn't really a reality for you anymore? And I guess I sort of wondered what your experience like that was when you sort of got yourself to a place where you could perhaps start considering what you wanted to do next.
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. And it's something that we spend a lot of time now at Frontline Mental Health and I guess counselling, even the programs and courses and stuff that we run, like conversations around the identity come up, and certainly then transition out of these roles. And so you're right. We do find ourselves walking very similar paths, certainly around, I guess, ages as well. And I think it's important. So at 30, 31, for most people, we're probably leaning into like, some level of expertise and comfort in our career. We've kind of got a bit of an idea as to what our trajectory looks like. And we are starting to, consider putting the accelerator down to ready ourselves for, 40s, 50s and beyond. And so for me, whilst I wasn't necessarily in another country, a lot of the challenges that you just spoke about were 100% mine. And I don't know, like if many listeners probably haven't, but if you go on Seek or LinkedIn and you put in like search parameters for like a convicted ex-police officer for dishonesty offences, because like that was the outcome at court, is the court didn't send me to prison, but they gave me a criminal conviction for it. Which just makes things, means I can't, the natural transition for a lot of police or law enforcement is you start looking at security roles, investigator roles, and I can't get a security license because I've got a criminal conviction. So even then I started to consider, well, maybe I wanted to get into finance. I have a real interest in real estate and in homes. And so I thought maybe I could pursue real estate, or mortgage brokering again. Who wants to go to the guy with your money that's got, this criminal conviction for theft and you've been in the police. So there was all these like stigmas that I had for myself as well. And these perceived stigmas, but I also needed to pay my bills. I had you would have been in the same boat. Like you've still got to contribute to the household. You've still got to do these things. So there was this competing need of like, well, firstly, who am I? Secondly, am I happy with that? And, or do I need to make some changes about who I would like to be, and start leaning into some of those behaviors and values? But then also, what does that mean? I need a job. I actually just need to start working so I can earn some money. Fortunately, a friend at the time, he worked in the hospitality industry. He had just been headhunted for a small startup in South Australia, and he asked if I wanted to come on board. So thankfully he knew me before all the stuff had happened. So again, was one of those believers in, like Matt Newlands wasn't a convicted ex-police officer. Matt Newlands was, a husband, a father, a good friend, a loyal worker,
good bloke, hard worker.
Exactly, all those things. It was me that was going, no, like Matt's a piece of shit, and he's a convicted cop, like he's corrupt. He's that was my perspective. So fortunately, he gave me a job. I didn't know like really what to do, how to do it. I joined the police, as I said, when I was 20. I didn't know what transferable skills, what that meant, but I found that they were there. So some of the stuff that we did was around running some like different events. We set up food stalls at places like Adelaide Oval and things. And I remember the first event, I was like, I didn't actually know what to do here other than maybe like a operation order. So I just applied the SMEAC model to running a 4-day event for the cricket. And I had a team of about 11 staff across the 4 days. And I gave them this 4-page document that had, situation, mission, execution. I had safe route in, was now adopted to like, where do you park your car and how do you get to the venue? I had like scheduled toilet breaks and all sorts of stuff in there around like peak periods of demand. Handed them this document and I was like, this is how we're going to try to run this, but let's be mindful of like the need to be adaptable here, because I've not done this before. So if you've got ideas, you've got opinions, like hit me with it, like you teach me. But then I also knew that like efficiencies too. So we started making some changes, like just even in the meal prep area. it's a very dynamic workforce. Thankfully, they were all good at what they did.
Yeah.
But it's like, let's just apply process. Let's just do this in a methodical way. And then like beyond that, it was like, I can talk to people, and I've been fortunate to be in a position, like even in the, the proactive policing role, getting information from people is really important, and trying to get them to do things that you want them to do is like, to build relationship is important. So I then adopted the same mentality. So I went and spoke to the security officers who were working the food vendor area that people had to come into, built a very quick relationship with them, and then offered them discounts on their lunch and dinners if they directed people towards the American barbecue. And so that's what he did, and that's what they were doing. So as people walked in, because he was chatting, they were handing out like little things, like little brochures and stuff. And he's like, "Oh, we've got some awesome American barbecue over here," and he could talk to, or they could talk to, how good it was because they'd eaten it. So small things like that identified transferable skills. So without harping on about American barbecue because it's delicious, but I did that until the business grew. I had a goal of wanting to get it to Woolworths. We had a take-home product that went into the commercial space. We did. We ended up having a meeting at Woolworths after about sort of 12, 18 months. And then the business merged with another company, and everyone was made redundant. For me, it was a massive activator of all of that past experience of like, once again, I'm put in the rubbish heap. Like I do this job, I invest a lot of time, effort, energy. I was traveling around the country, promoting this product and stuff. And I was spending hours on planes, and way more than I probably should have been for this business that like, they didn't give a shit about me. But I had to, that was my new identity. I was going to be this guy that was going to make this business massive. And then I was then once again found out, like, out of work. So that was hard. And so I ended up I was just asking people for jobs. I was applying for anything. Ended up very fortunate, afforded an opportunity to work just as business development in a commercial retaining wall company, of all things. I knew nothing about construction or retaining walls, but have transferable skills around learning systems. So after about 6 months, I was quoting jobs, and I knew I could go out to people's homes and could talk to them about building retaining walls because, like, we're chameleons in the police, aren't we? We can do all sorts of stuff. So again,
whatever that person needs in that moment.
Absolutely. Transferable skills. And then, so I did that for a while. I enjoyed that, met some good people. And then in 2019, my cousin, she was an Are You OK ambassador, community ambassador. And I saw this on socials, and I was like, what is this? And she said, we volunteer our time and we talk about the importance of conversations. So I reached out to Are You OK and said I'd like to somehow be involved, and went through a bit of an interview process and got sent to Melbourne, did some training, and became an ambassador for Are You OK in 2019. And I still remain an ambassador, and opportunities have grown then over time. I've been to all sorts of organisations and spoke about a little bit about my story and the importance of conversations. I've done a little bit of stuff with them in the first responder space, and hosted their Are They Triple OK podcast series.
Wow.
And then I started to lean into wanting to be of service. I started to volunteer my time. I did a program, a peer-led program that was run by Dr. John Lane, he's now the chief psychiatrist for DVA here in Australia. At the time, he was a clinical psychiatrist. He's a former digger himself, became a medic, took multiple deployments, 30-odd years in the Army, and he's now a clinical psychiatrist. I did one of his programs, and I was like, this is where I need to be, like peer-led stuff. 10 people in a room that have all navigated difficult things as a result of service, and this was an opportunity for shared learning. I said to John I wanted to do more, and he mentored me I volunteered for an organisation. He mentored me to become a facilitator of that program. Me and a couple of others, like Narelle, who's also one of the co-founders of Frontline Mental Health. And between us, I think, between a small group of us, we put something like 250 military and first responders through this group program. And meanwhile, I studied my diploma of counselling. I started to say yes to things. People asked me if I would come and share my story, and I said only if only if there's a reason. I'm not in the business of like trauma porn, basically. I don't want this just to be like this idea of everyone just gets to point at me and go, oh, wow, what a story. Like that's, sad. There has to be a purpose for it. So, I went to the Frontline Mental Health Conference, which is not obviously ours, but just coincidence. The inaugural conference in 2019. I was invited to be a keynote speaker there, and I didn't even know what an abstract was or what a keynote was. So after a bit of Googling, I put together a presentation, a 45-minute presentation, and I was flown up to Townsville and presented on the just on my story and some of the learnings and what I understood would be effective and helpful to prevent others walk a similar path. And that, then I leaned into it. To fast track the story, I then moved into community mental health. Worked in that space for a little bit.
After you had your diploma.
So I was studying that when I went into community mental health. It seems when I was in the cops, and then when I got out, when I went for RPL, I just said, like, can I just do a quick assessment? There was advanced diplomas of business and management. There was business administration, leadership, government investigations. Like there was so much stuff, community services, so much stuff that I could get all this RPL for. So I got RPL'd for a diploma in community services. I can't tell you what subjects are in it, but somehow my 10 years in the cops justified it. That got me a job in community mental health.
Right.
I loved it. I started learning from others in the community that were navigating challenges. And then I went in the organisation I was volunteering for. I then worked for them. They asked me to come and work for them in a facilitator role and development role. Did that for a while until it got to a point where they were worked predominantly in like that post-injury stage, and I was just like, we need to do better.
We need to be a little more proactive, preventative side. Here. Yeah.
How do we ready people for stress and struggle rather than capture them on the other side? We have to put like a safe landing place for them if it all gets too much, which is why I still do the counselling. But what would have 2013, 2015 version of me needed? Better education, better understanding, like a different culture around disclosure. Just
less judgment.
Education.
Make it public. Make it what word do I want to say? Like acceptable and just part of the, like you're saying, part of the conversation to like admit, I'm not. Don't think I've been doing great lately.
Yeah, and then knowing what to do with that, then what? Like that's always the question for me. And now what?
Yeah.
So we've got that. Even if it's as dark thoughts or thoughts of suicide, it's like, okay, like I can sit here with you, like you're not alone in this. But the question is, it's somehow framed as like, now what? Where are we going? Because we have to be moving somewhere. We can't live here. We can't stay here. We want to spend as much time as we need to acknowledge this and understand
validate, process, all of what brought you here. Cool, but like
understand the message. Now what?
Let's not live here. Let's get you out. Yeah.
So let's not hide from it, because hiding like that goes back to that Stranger Things comment that I made before, where they're constantly running and hiding, and it's like, hey, you wear yourself out. It's like, let's rally, let's recruit an army of some people, some close friends that can sit here with you and go like, this will not beat you, but we are going to find out what this is trying to tell us, and then we're going to put those messages to work. So so that's been, I guess that was really the driving force behind Frontline Mental Health, that myself and Narelle, so the other co-founder, we thought there's got to be space for education. And so we were afforded an opportunity to work with Defence. That was our sort of first big project. We did that, and it's just kind of grown somewhat organically from that, just word of mouth. It was only really going to be a side project to start with. But things at the organisation that we were working for internally, just as with lots of organisations, the internal politics all become, a bit ridiculous, and a huge portion of the workforce all left around the same time for similar issues. We were part of that, and rather than just getting another another job in this space, well, like maybe the timing might be right for us to see what Frontline could look like. And now fast forward to today, we're doing our things. We work with military first responders. We also do stuff in the corporate space, local government. We find we resonate well with like the rail industry, with the mining industry. We work in health. We've worked with media, all sorts. And a bulk of our programs are really geared around like understanding mental health, normalizing and understanding what stress looks like, but like what do we do with it? So wellbeing practices. And then most recently, we've been fortunate to align ourselves with the Boulder Crest Foundation in the US, where we're now partnering with them to look at bringing the post-traumatic growth programs with a focus on Struggle Well program in particular, bringing Struggle Well to Australia as the partner organisation. And Boulder Crest calls themselves the home of PTG, and we're still trying to play with what that looks like for Australia. Like, are we the rental?
Yeah.
Are we the holiday rental of PTG?
Well, and that's was one of the things I wanted to ask you about. So obviously, Frontline Mental Health is this organisation that you and you mentioned your co-founder Narelle have started and built from the ground up, and you guys offer training, education, like you said, and different organizations that you're partnering with and assisting with and all that kind of thing. Talk to me about how the Boulder Crest Struggle Well thing came about, and equally, I think probably my main question as well is, I'm hitting you with multiple questions, so I apologize, but before I forget, obviously we're both Aussies. I know your brother lives in the States, so you would have some knowledge of what things are like over here. There's a camaraderie in all, I think, first responder and military roles across the world, but I do think there is very much a slight culture difference between Americans and Australians that I think you and I both would know and understand. How do you think that Struggle Well and the post-traumatic growth concept transfers over to an Australian audience?
Yeah, and really important, good question. And I'll start with the first part, which is how did we find ourselves talking with Josh Goldberg and his team of experts at the Boulder Crest Foundation. And so a friend of Frontline's, a gentleman by the name of Mark Reedy. Mark Reedy is an Australian veteran. So he did a lot back here. He's the founder of the Invictus Pathways program, which was a local South Australian program of looking to try to facilitate supporting, veteran athletes into the Invictus Australia concept. So in the Invictus Pathways program, he was heavily involved in that. He's an advocate for Invictus Australia as well, so he's still closely connected with them. He has done a lot here around supporting military and first responders in their mental health. And back in 2019, Josh Goldberg came to South Australia to speak at a conference, and Mark Reedy was involved in that conference. The two of them met; they became friends. Soon after, Mark then asked Josh if there was a chance for him to do the Warrior Path program. He felt like I'm speaking for him now, and I'm hoping that if he's listening to this, that I'm doing his story justice and I'm not speaking out of turn. But he felt as though the programs that were available maybe in Australia weren't quite what he was looking for, and he wanted to. He'd heard a lot about Warrior Path, so he went over to the States. He was what we understand is the first Australian veteran to go and do Warrior Path in America. He did that and just absolutely loved it, and he's like, "This is a concept that we need to look at bringing back to Australia in some way." But he didn't. He talks about not necessarily having an organisation that he felt would closely align with Boulder Crest, and the model of not subscribing to this narrative that veterans are broken or that there's that's the outcome. That post-traumatic growth, this idea that our well-being doesn't have to be the sacrifice of service. I think that's one of the things that we align with Boulder Crest. We're talking about, training, not treatment. And we've got all these like catchphrases, but they're important because there's truth in those words. So
very much so.
Reedy kind of sat on this relationship for a little bit. Him and Josh are still like really close friends. When Narelle and I started, and I talk about Narelle and I, also one of the other sort of behind the scenes but integral roles is Narelle's husband Adam. He's current serving Air Force, and he's in a highly deployable role, which makes balancing Air Force and doing all of the administration work for Frontline quite a delicate balance. But he works tirelessly behind the scenes to help us grow. So when Narelle and I started, Mark said, I think that Boulder Crest is something you need to be looking at. They're, again, peer-led programs, strengths focused, it's education. It's not like pathologizing the experience. We then met with Josh just online. We started a few meetings. It progressed to the point where we said, well, I think we're kind of at a stage where we kind of just need to experience this ourselves. And then 5 of us from Frontline went to the States earlier this year. Myself and one of the Frontline team, Colin, he's former Navy clearance diver, really just a genuinely good man with a heart of service. He came with us. So Colin and I went to Arizona. We went to the Arizona ranch, and then Narelle went with Tara. Tara's former Fire and Rescue New South Wales and has spent 20 plus years, serving her community, has recently completed a PhD into the impacts of suicide on firefighters. So really important body of work. And she was a real advocate in the mental health space too, and does some incredible work. So Tara and Narelle went to Missouri, and they worked with Sheepdog facility out there, and they did Warrior Path the same time that Colin and I did Warrior Path. And then Mark came back and he volunteered at Arizona, which he's done a number of times. He goes back on a regular basis and just spends time at the ranch helping. We did the program. We did the full 90 days. We immersed ourselves in the 7-day residential. And then off the back of that, the program finished. Josh and a couple of the team, Greg Moran and Ian Ritchie, came down to Arizona. They flew in, and we spent the weekend together as a group just talking about what really just trying to understand the programs and is it relative and relational to Australia, and how could we do this? How could we implement this? Boulder Crest has been fantastic in that they are not interested in global domination. Rather, how do the locals, that understand the nuance of the different cultural changes, like how do we make this relevant?
How to integrate it, yeah.
So it's not just an off-the-shelf approach of like, you must do it this way. It's like,
it's brilliant.
So that was helpful for us as well. And they have, like, the support that we have received from Boulder Crest has been absolutely exceptional. The team are constantly available, with ridiculous times to have meetings, as you would well know, to try to balance the timeframes. And the team are just forever giving, like they are true organisation of service to this community. And so then we got back early. In fact, while we were over there, we also met with the Tucson Police Department and met with Chief Chad Kazmar and spoke to him and some of the team. Dominic Flores from Tucson Police was instrumental in bringing Struggle Well program into their department. Chad Kazmar has been a very public, outspoken advocate for the value of the program within his police department as well. And the organisation, the Tucson Police Department, the hospitality that we received from them was just absolutely outstanding. We were fortunate to see the opening of a Struggle Well program where 25 Tucson PD members had volunteered to come and do the program. They run them monthly. It's volunteer based, so they don't have to go. And every month for the last 4.5 years, they've filled the 25 seats. So I think that speaks to the impact of the program. We spent some time with Tucson PD, and it was a really incredible experience, even just in the short time that we had with them, to build some relationships. And they've offered support to first responder agencies back in Australia to discuss and navigate barriers and challenges of implementation strategies. And so that's been like we've got a strong team behind us that are helping with this like monumental task that we have ahead of us. And then over the coming months, from February when we got home, there's a couple of conferences we went to. We spoke about Struggle Well. We're trying to build momentum around PTG and the Struggle Well program in particular. And then only just recently, Josh Goldberg and Billy Barrow is one of the expert or master trainers for Struggle Well. Billy came out with Josh, and we did a series of one-day Struggle Well workshops around the country. So
Yep.
Frontline Mental Health, we hosted Josh and Billy from Boulder Crest. We did Adelaide, Darwin, Sydney, Brisbane,
Brisbane.
and then we also had a couple of parliamentary presentations and just a stack of meetings and stuff in amongst all of that as well. So it was nonstop.
Yep.
So, and I guess a very public thank you as well for your support, albeit from, over there. I know that you're still heavily connected back into the first responder community here in Australia. So your
That's all
support
right.
is helpful.
No, could not have been more thrilled when Matt and I sort of spoke offline a few months ago, and then he told me that was happening. So I sort of was like, there was no Melbourne one, which maybe we can
there
have
wasn't,
a conversation about that. I was wondering if there was like an AFL conflict.
That's right. Yeah, it's the Adelaide Victoria thing. No, in fact, a shout out to Roger Sutherland from A Healthy Shift as well, who does some incredible work in the first responder space. I spoke with him. He said the same. He called me out on it. And he's like, really? No Victorian? I was like, mate, we don't have any grant funding. We don't have, we are, it is our business. We're not a charity. We don't raise money. This is coming out of our pocket. It's costing us thousands of dollars to put this on, but we're invested in it. I said, please don't think that we don't have the Victorian first responder and military agencies, close to our heart. We absolutely do. We just have to be strategic in where we went. And we did have interest already. The states that we went to, there was already significant interest from some of the first responder leaders around what the programs looked like. And so if you are a first responder agency leader in Victoria and you would like more information, please let us know. We'll happily coordinate something, because our intention is to bring the guys back. But I think to the second part of your question, that was what we were looking to do. We're I guess a sample size of a couple of ex first responders. Narelle's former South Australia police and then did 10 years in the military, in the Air Force. Like I said, Adam, her husband, is 10 years. That's right, 10 years. He's 17 years in the Air Force. Highly deployable role, highly stressful position. He flies on the P8s. The others in the team that we've got, and the others that are connected, we've got military first responder background. But we still wanted to make sure that it wasn't just us saying, hey, you need this. We wanted to put Josh and Billy in the room, experts at PTG and an overview of what this program looks like, and let the community, or at least as many of the community that we could get to, tell us, is this actually something that you think lands and resonates with you? And we had over probably close to 200 people around the country, first responders and military personnel that came. They sat through the one day sort of overview of what PTG model looks like, what the concepts are, what we believe to be, this post-traumatic growth concept. And we had really, really positive feedback. We're now in conversations, with a number of agencies who are looking at implementation strategies of piloting the programs within their organizations. But again, it's we kind of have this idea of nothing about us without us type thing. How do we work with the community that we're trying to support to best understand what they need? We believe Boulder Crest, the Struggle Well program, Warrior Path, aspirationally long term, we'd love to see Warrior Path programs being run in Australia. It's a far bigger logistical beast to overcome, but we also have a bit of a saying is, just because it's hard doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. That's our approach now, is how do we continue to work this, build the momentum, and ensure that agencies have as much support around what it looks like for us to embed these programs and make this training available for their people. So now I guess the next stage for us, like I said, we're talking to a couple of agencies around piloting the program. We figure if we're going to have a few organizations do it, then it's probably best to have a few more, because then we can look at shared costs. And so we're trying to get this concept of collaboration between fire departments, ambulance services and law enforcement, correctional services, the health departments and things. So that's where our work currently sits, and as well as business as usual stuff for Frontline as well. So there's a bit going on.
just a bit,
Just a few things.
just a tiny little bit. And no, thank you for sharing all of that, because I've been dying to talk to you to find out how it all went. And I think like first responders in general, like we are first ones to call bullshit on something if we think it's a crock of shit, if we think it's a waste of our time and all that kind of thing. So I love that there's been some interest and buy-in and all that kind of thing. Do you think it's how would I say it? Because obviously, like first responder organizations and everything here are so different because there's like hundreds in each state. Do you think, and whether it's something you can delve into, if you can't, that's totally fine with it. Like, you've got like state-based fire department, AMBOs, police, all that kind of thing. Do you think that's going to maybe help facilitate it, or is that going to be a barrier because then you have to have the entire organization buy into it?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you name like both good and bad. Like it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? So we know that there's tens of thousands of first responder agencies in the US. Some jurisdictions might only be a handful of people as well. So implementing a training program there is fine, as opposed to I say it's fine. That's flippant. It's not. Every organisation has its challenges around that, budgets and taking people offline. But here, you're right. You talk about South Australia Police. There's 6,000 members. And we're a small agency. You talk about VicPol, New South Wales Police, talking like 18,000 police officers. So you're right. We do need, like, you get one shot at a jurisdiction in that sense, don't you? So, where US has tens of thousands, here there's, something like 30 to 40 first responder agencies in the country. So each state just has kind of like one police department, generally two fire departments, a volunteer and a retained permanent department. And then your ambulance service either falls under like the health department or its own standalone agency. So there's a lot of complexities, but then there's also on the flip side is that if we are a good fit, and I say we, as in the facilitator team or the guide team that Frontline will be putting together, and the program's the right program, that is like, then it makes it a lot easier for organizations, because look, we know we're in a noisy market. There's organizations out there, and we've probably worked for them as well. That's that they're in the business of keeping people sick. Because there's grant money, there's funding and stuff available in this space. We also know then that I have a meeting with an executive leader, and then the person after me has also got a mental health initiative or program that they're trying to say is like something decent. But I think the frustration here in Australia with what we see is that everything seems to be like fresh every couple of years, because it's usually connected to a grant or it's connected to some sort of like research thing. An organization says they're going to do a pilot of an initiative, and someone's going to do a PhD. And really the only real winners are like, and that's not to discount some of the effectiveness of some of those programs, but they're not sustainable. They're not long-term. And other than someone getting a high five and a PhD off the back of it, like you go, well, then they move on to the next project. And now you've got a department that everyone's got different training. As a first responder myself, like former first responder, it's just fatiguing. Like, just constantly training or just hearing the same story of like, we need to do better. It's like, why are we not just going to evidence-based programs? PTG concept has been around for 30, 40 years, It's not new. It's and that's what people are like, how come we haven't heard this before? I was like, this is the newest old thing that, like it's been around, or the oldest new thing, depending on how you want to frame it. Some of the people that were in the rooms listening to the programs, we wanted frontline members. We didn't want it just to be leaders. We wanted it to be boots on the ground, everyone from crime gang task force to probationary constables to administration staff that work in some of these places, like clinicians, like come and have a look at this stuff and see if it fits. So that the ground up bottom, or the bottom up, top down approach we have to have buy-in at all levels. So I think that's a long-winded way of saying to your question, like, I think you name the challenges. If you don't get buy-in, then it's hard to get in. But once we do get those agencies on board, then it's just the monumental task of navigating implementation strategies. How do you train 18,000 New South Wales police officers? So.
Yeah.
I'm
glad that's a you problem right now.
Yeah. Well, and I think this is one of the things we said with like Chad Kazmar, like, that it's not a project. It's not a, we'll have this done in 5 years time. And then we just like, we move on. It's like, this is how we do things.
This needs to be the way the future. Yeah.
This is just how we do things. And I think going out to Tucson PD Academy, they've got like struggle to strength on a massive sign as you come into the auditorium. You walk into their theater auditorium where they do bulk of their training. It's like, what are you grateful for today? Is on the wall. It's like there's the hero's journey at graduation. There is like this idea of PTG is embedded at the academy before they even graduate. So they are building a culture of disclosure, a culture of education, well-being practices. They understand like where their story fits and how they can apply that as a part of service to their community and hit all those domains of PTG. And, I think to one of the questions that you said earlier around like navigating transition, I think this all comes to an end for all of us at some point. All of our careers will finish. Like the identity challenge is for every single one of us to consider and navigate in some way, whether it's 3 years and we choose to leave, whether it's 40 years and we choose to leave, or just the law says we can no longer work anymore, or we find ourselves injured mentally, physically, or, disciplinary action, whatever scenario you come up with, it all stops at some point. So I think we have to be looking at how do we then best prepare ourselves for the struggles that we'll face in the role.
About what's next. Yeah.
And then be mindful of what's next beyond, so that this doesn't become who we are.
Yeah. And there's one thing I want to contribute before I sort of ask you one last question, but I kind of look at it like, so you've got, the struggle well, which is the thing that you implement into the departments. And then I think over here, they've got struggle well experience, which is kind of the first responder based one. And then the warrior path one, which I think is like the veteran based one. And I may have that incorrect, but I think for an Australian population, it would make sense to kind of combine those, potentially the military and first responder ones, if you're looking at doing that kind of warrior path sort of thing. But I have the privilege to know and have interviewed a couple of the guides who work for Boulder Crest and the peer-led thing like you talked about, and the joy and the passion and the what they get out of being able to help people in that way is just completely remarkable. I think like you may have met Travis Gribble. He's someone that I have the privilege to have spoken with on a few occasions, and another one's Vance Rowe. But I look at it like there's an aspect of that with the what now, what comes next, that's missing in our Australian population of people who, like you and I, joined when we were 20, and then maybe they're 45 and they've done or even 50 and they've done a 25, 30-year career and they're out of either the military or a first responder role. They still have this significant amount of life left, but with the loss of identity and stuff, I think a lot of people struggle with that transition. Giving people new purpose is so important, but like you're saying, we talked about that ultimate dream of, say, having like a ranch or like a property or something for Australian people to go and do this kind of thing on. There's a huge population of people who would make the best guides imaginable that are just out there waiting to be utilized. So I really hope that after, everything gets sorted out in the wash, that there is that kind of capability too, because I think that's just something that would be so powerful, that it wouldn't be for everyone, but for the people who not only could do it but also be really good at it, and it would meet that purpose for them, and to still maintain that camaraderie and be of service. Like, wow,
I 100% agree. And our experience at the ranch in Arizona and meeting the guides there, I'm still in contact with some of the guides, and they have had a profound impact in my life. Even in the short time that I got to, spend spent with them, have like very fond memories of my experience there, and then still stay connected with them. But you're absolutely right. I think the reshaping or retraining, some of the past experiences. There's people that I know that I haven't met yet that are going to be in a position to provide or to be guides for military and first responders in Australia. That it genuinely excites me to see where this idea can go. I also then know that I have to work my ass off along with the rest of the team to make this come to life too. And so we've been fortunate to have a number of people reach out to us already and offer their support and assistance, and then also ask how they can get involved. We've had people inquire as to now how can they get over to the States to do the Warrior Path program. You're right. I was on, myself and Colin. We were the two Aussies on a US course. Obviously, me being law enforcement, there was one other. He was military connection still, but was law enforcement. In my mind, other than my imposter syndrome of these guys were absolute legends and I didn't deserve to be at the table, but outside of that, look, it worked really well. I mean, in my experience of running peer-led programs for the last probably sort of 5, 6, 7 years or so, it's been the same. We put military first responders in the room together. There's absolutely nuances and differences in their roles. More often than not, we wear a different color uniform, but at the core, a lot of the reasons why people are joining and what it is that they're trying to get from service experience is very similar. So we know some of the struggles also look very similar too, and it seems to be, in our experience at least, it has worked still quite effectively to have the combination. So we've had conversations with people about existing ranches and properties that exist here in Australia to look at what a warrior path here might look like. Our focus is struggle well, but it's certainly not to say that if a funding opportunity or a grant or something came up, philanthropic funding came up for us to explore warrior path program, then we'll respond with whatever the community sort of asks us to respond with. We're not for a moment suggesting we're the experts here, rather how can we just contribute to what the future of some of this might look like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that. And I know you're on a time crunch, so I don't want to keep you any longer. Okay. But the one last thing I guess I wanted to highlight that I'm aware of, and you've mentioned Marley being a really, really good friend of yours. Explain to me briefly.
Of course.
The involvement or how it works with there's a wonderful organization, Marley and Dr. Dan Pronk from Aussie Frontline. Explain to me what the connection is and what you guys offer in terms of services for them.
Sure. Yeah. So Marley's an absolute legend of a bloke. He's still current serving first responder, and he is the brains and the sort of the founder of Aussie Frontline. Dr. Dan Prong is now heavily involved in that business. They're co-directors of the Aussie Frontline Foundation as well.
It's now a foundation.
Transitioned into a foundation recently. But between Dan and Marley, they have had a huge impact in the military and first responder community over the last few years. Marley spoke to, I said about that other friend of ours. Three of us I reckon it was 2017, we went and spent a weekend together just at an Airbnb. It may have been around someone's birthday, possibly around Marley's birthday. And we just kind of hung out and just spent time together away from families. And and there was one night we were sitting around and I remember we were having a glass of red, and he spoke about Aussie, not necessarily Aussie Frontline at the time, but about the logo. And that's what I think is the real anchoring community for the Aussie Frontline community, is the hybrid combination of the 6 services, the Army, Air Force, Navy, the police, fire and ambulance, combined into one logo as a way of representing a sense of unity and community, that we are one family. Marley had this concept of wanting to instill pride back in service in the community, and at a time where it felt like it was starting to slip, and potentially in some spaces it might still be slipping. But the idea was he wanted to start just selling T-shirts, and the money raised would go towards supporting military and first responders in however that looked. We spoke about what it might look like for us to do something together, how we could all support each other. Marley, I guess, took the ball by the horns. He created this thing over the coming years. Aussie Frontline has now evolved into a whole range of apparel. They've been so some fantastic programs where they've done like the Pay It Forward program, which was born out from a firefighter here, who was, I think, the 100th customer or something, and Marley tried to give him a free T-shirt. And this guy Dan is his name. I won't give his full name, just in case he doesn't want it out there. But just again, another real good human being, another good man of the community, and just unsurprisingly, extremely selfless, and just went, I've got enough Aussie Frontline shirts, send it to someone who needs it. And Marley went, hold on, I think he might be onto something. And that's, developed into this Pay It Forward. Marley and Aussie Frontline have contributed to significant incidents around Australia. There's been a number of catastrophic incidents resulted in some extreme tragedies here over the last few years. And I guess the Aussie Frontline T-shirt is a way, and jumpers, hoodies, baseball caps, like whatever.
Yep, stickers, you name it. I have a whole bunch. So.
Yeah. I've been stopped in airports. I fly a lot, and I'm often representing a Aussie Frontline logo. I've been stopped at baggage carousels, by others who have seen the logo, or they've, it's been good. My luggage has, the Aussie Frontline stickers and stuff all over it. It is I guess probably, I was going to say a low key way, probably not so low key, but it's a way of just representing, we stand in unity as a family and support each other. And so the concept still remains the same of the money that is raised goes towards different mechanisms of support. And part of that, I guess, is the relationship now between Frontline Mental Health and Aussie Frontline is Marley will, and Dan, I keep saying Marley, but Aussie Frontline, Dan does incredible work there as well and is a real advocate for change and education as well. Aussie Frontline will provide 3 sponsored or free counselling packages, or 3 free sessions to individuals who feel as though they need to speak to someone, and they don't necessarily feel like they can go through the usual mechanisms of there's often the standardized EAP services that organizations provide. We are outside of the agency. They come to us, they get referred to us. So the relationship then is the people, they get supported by either myself, Narelle, or some of the other counsellors on the team, depending on who they want to see, who they want to speak with. Our team is growing. They all have different backgrounds, and I'm sure we'll soon have a team member that is former Victoria Police detective, I think, in 2026. So
that's the plan, if you'll have me.
May or may not have come up in a meeting yesterday, but
oh Jesus, all right.
So the intention is that people can put their hand up and say, I'd like to speak to people who understand and people who get it. There's no obligation. They don't get the hard sell at the end of the 3 sessions. Some people just use one, they get a bit of information, and then they move on with their career. And our role is, what it really stemmed back to is Marley was there for me, as with others, but in this instance, this context, Marley was there for me at an extremely difficult time. And had it not been for our conversations, I don't know I'm reasonably confident where I would be. We wanted to see how it is that we could replicate that and scale that same approach. How could we be there for other people, and how can we contribute to that? So our team are all registered counsellors. We've all done appropriate training and study. We've got our skill sets. We've got our different backgrounds, and we do the best we can with the time that we have to hold space for you and your darkness, whatever that looks like, or and then be a conduit of support to other agencies if need be, or you can continue to see our team as well. Aussie Frontline also does other things. Surfers Journey, Ryan from Surfers Journey is current serving Metro Fire member here. He's got an incredible program just bringing military first responders and their families together. Grace and I have been a couple of times and done some surfing with Ryan, just to be able to spend time together and in the ocean and do some things, it's incredible. So massive shout out to Ryan, the Surfers Journey, and Aussie Frontline supports that too. And they've only just recently now got their trailer where they go around and provide regional barbecues.
That. I love that concept, because that's what Aussies are about, having a barbie, and just having a chat. Yes. Yeah.
And the one other final thing that I'll say to them as well is the Thriving on the Frontline conference. They've run one in Adelaide and they did one on the Gold Coast earlier this year. And again, it is targeted specifically for frontline members. So it is keynote presentations. Dan Pronk's often on the stage and sharing his learnings around resilience. And then there's a whole range of workshops, everything from ice baths to TACMed. We're doing tourniquet lessons to like Frontline. We ran an identity workshop. Keith Banks did some stuff around like corporate transition, and there's yoga, there's breath work, there's all this stuff that's available. And it's so keep a lookout for that. I think May 2026, they'll likely be back in Queensland in Brisbane. So if you are in Australia, particularly in Brisbane, keep an eye out for that. And so we just do what we can to support each other. I don't get to see Marley as much as I'd like, but we're all busy doing stuff. But I know that he's there. We have a very strong connection and a great love for each other. So he's doing some amazing work.
That's awesome. I love that for you guys. And as someone who, it's like my choice every year is I'm going to buy some Aussie Frontline stuff because I know that it supports those counselling services. And I'm waiting to get a very particular colour T-shirt for my husband. It keeps being out of stock.
Right. We'll have to take this conversation offline and see if we can help out.
But equally, I've done a pay it forward. Awesome. And when you get the email that like someone in somewhere got it and you're just like, fuck yeah. So I think that's that sense of community incredible. That we want to foster, that you guys are working hard, on with like everything that you and Narelle and Adam and everyone at your organization is doing. And equally Marley, Dan and everyone in that. It's coming from over here, it's like almost like an industrialized complex of like first responder stuff, and people know that there's money in it, like you were saying. Yeah. But not everyone has the right intentions. Yeah. But I feel there's like that Aussie spirit involved in what you guys do and what they do, and it's everyone's in it just to make sure that everyone's here tomorrow. Yeah. And I think there's something really incredible and touching about that.
I think you highlight a really important point. Like we like collectively, Frontline Mental Health, Aussie Frontline, we genuinely believe, like Boulder Crest Foundation, we genuinely believe in like the people that do these roles, these really often difficult, challenging, at times distressing roles. But we want people to be able to be in these roles for as long as they choose to. And I think that's the key thing for us is like if we can keep people in these roles in a sustainable way, that's not just surviving, but it's they're the best versions of themselves because of it. Also known as thriving. How do we support that? How do we can contribute that so that their well-being, their relationships, their way of being is not the sacrifice of service? And so we're just doing the best we can to provide that environment.
Absolutely, I love that. Do you have time for the questions, or do you have to run?
No.
Okay, cool. All right. Thank you for the time that you've given me today, Matt. It's so appreciated, and sharing your story and everything you guys are up to. I'm going to pop Matt's contact details in the show notes for anyone wanting any further information, explanation, any members back home who are interested in receiving counselling, all that kind of stuff. I'll pop it all in the show notes. So we normally finish these conversations by asking our guests 2 questions. Okay. And it's in regards to how we hold our darkness. So I think that our roles permeate darkness throughout our lives, regardless of whether we want them or not. And it, we talk about how we hold space for it, obviously, from the name of the podcast. So the first question I like to ask is, what is it that you do in order to be able to hold space for your darkness?
I think there's an important part around acceptance. That whole analogy of like the wolf you feed is the one that sort of gets the biggest, and probably don't have time to go into that, but I'm sure people know the analogy I'm talking about, the parable that I'm talking about. I don't try to fight that wolf, rather I know why it shows up, and I guess I try to do the best I can to still connect with people. I talk about like growing my forest. I talk about the forest behaves in a similar way to humans. It relies on each other. Each component of the forest exists to serve the broader community or the broader forest. And And so I think that for me, I lean into my forest. Some people in my life are the big tall trees that sort of expand out into the canopy, and others might be the quiet, sort of, smaller shrubs, roots in the ground maybe as well, that help just connect me with other people. And every single piece of my forest serves a purpose. And I try to draw on those people in my community that can hold that space for me and the stories that I might need to share at the time. Look, I think working a lot, I find it difficult still. Like, self-care still becomes a massive issue for me. It's just a constant challenge, how I best look after myself. But that, I think, helps just keep that wolf quietly at bay. Like, I know it's there. Sometimes it gets a little cranky with me. And once I spend some time with it and settle it down, it allows the other wolf, to do its thing. So it's. I think there's just conversation is probably the best thing, and I know focusing on some small things like routine and structure, sleep hygiene, which I know like Roger from Healthy Shift will like me to talk about, and then also just monitoring things like my alcohol and coffee intake. They're all free. I can do all these things for free. It's just I have to be a little bit more disciplined at times.
And intentional about it. Yeah, that makes sense. No, I talked about the two rules on the radio show this week. So that's why I was smacking so much. Yeah. And the second question is, and you may have sort of covered it briefly, but what can someone do in order to support you and help you in terms of holding space for that darkness?
Yeah, I think we in society put a lot of work around trying to encourage people to speak up, to speak out. I think we also need to ensure that people feel confident to reach in and to speak in. I think that's the stuff. I mean, the work that we do with Are You OK? I think there was some research that came out that said close to 50% of the population believe they didn't believe they were the right person to have the conversation. And that doesn't sit well with me, because I think that if we are often experts in each other's lives, especially our close friends and family, doesn't mean we have to fix anything or pick up their stuff and carry it for them, but rather, how can we, just hold that space to be the conduit, the safe landing place, I like to call it, that, people can try stuff and come back to and go, hey, that wasn't so great, or that was effective, whether it's, appropriate professional help, appropriate other supports, whatever, that more holistic sense of well-being. I think that all starts with trust and connection, and that can take some time. So if you have that gut feeling of, in this case, I've noticed Erin's not quite herself, I would rather have a difficult conversation with you than not have the ability to have a conversation again. And, that might sound like pretty exaggerated, but we know that there's many people that we wish we had a chance to have conversations with. And on reflection go, man, I saw some stuff and maybe I could have or should have done something. So it's not from a place of judgment, but rather, how do we just lean into that difficulty? And it is gross. Like, I have these conversations all the time. I'm paid to, and it's still hard. So, I'm not saying that this is easy, but if we can reach in and create that trust, connection, that safety, people will want to talk. We've all got stuff to say.
That. Absolutely. And I think the last thing I would say is, I think people underestimate the power of just feeling heard. Yeah. Someone just
100%
letting you, and you don't have to, like you say, you don't have to solve their problems. You don't have to give them advice. You just have to hold space for it. And that's sometimes that is enough to make someone go, actually be able to exhale.
Yeah. Listen to understand, not to respond.
Yes.
That's all.
Oh, yes.
Just let them say what they need to say.
And we're gonna leave it on that truth bomb, Matt. That was brilliant. And I know you got to go anyway.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you again for your time. It is so greatly appreciated.
You're most welcome. Thanks for having me.
This has been another episode of I Will Hold Space for Your Darkness. I've been your host, Erin Jane, and as always, let me listen in a way you've never been heard. Cheers.